everyone. Welcome to Sphere of Being, the podcast which looks at how do we show up as leaders? How do we come and bring ourselves to our businesses and our lives in general? Because we're not just an isolated machine, we do have personal lives as well. And it's very important when we show up as leaders to be heart-centered, to see how we can check our blind spots, which can be a bit difficult if we're just trying to do that for ourselves. And this is why today our amazing guest, Selina Yankson, is somebody who's going to tell us all about how you can review you, which I think is fabulous. I'm just going to read her bio because it's something that's very important. The history and the experience that Selina has is something that I think is really worthy of notice. So without further ado, I will read Selina's bio. Selina Yankson, self-leadership executive coach, career strategist, and founder of the You Review OS, the You Review podcast, and Find Your Hidden Edge career audit. For almost 15 years, Selina has been coaching and mentoring corporate professionals to reach their full potential. Selina's belief is that leadership begins within and true potential is unblocked or unlocked through self-awareness. An accredited coach, her extensive corporate background includes leadership roles in subjects like marketing, law, consultancy, IT, financial services, and she has also led global programs. As the leader of the You Review and host of the You Review podcast, I'll get my teeth in for that. Selina is dedicated to helping leaders discover their hidden edge and amplify their impact. A lifelong learner, her insightful approach to self-leadership has cultivated a significant online presence with 40,000 followers on Quora and 8,000 on LinkedIn. My goodness, girl, you've got a lot of followers. That is amazing. Congratulations on that.
Thank you, thank you. Well, that's been over a period of years, I've got to be honest. And I think LinkedIn has been by far the most challenging, to be honest. I know that lots of people are probably going to say, oh no, it's really easy on LinkedIn, but I found it really quite challenging to find the right people, to find my tribe.
Well, do you know, we do a lot on LinkedIn, and it is, and I think it's getting increasingly difficult. And this is why I decided, and I know you have a podcast, but I decided that actually I needed something which gave me more of a legacy media presence, which was the actual YouTube side of things, which is fabulous because it leaves your imprint on there for forever. Excuse me. Gosh, I'm just going to have a drink. I don't know where that came from. Hang on. Oh, a little frog in the throat there. Yeah, and everybody listening, it's getting up for summertime here in the UK, so it might be a bit of pollen and
It is. Honestly, I've got late onset hay fever, and it's been an absolute nightmare this year. So I totally sympathise with that. I love being
yeah.
outside, ironically, but tree pollen is my enemy.
Oh yeah, tree pollen isn't so good for me either. So I could just see the eyes scratching, and I'm thinking, oh yeah, a bit of hay fever going on there. But it's very interesting what you say about garnering the following and actually having something which you're providing information a lot to people, because I'd like your view actually on as a leader, how do we show up on social media? I mean, it seems to me that the more shock tactics or grabbing headlines on a negative basis are the ones that kind of get you the views, etc. And that's what the algorithms are all looking for, isn't it? So I'd like your take on how do you implement integrity as a leader in your business with the whole thing about social media and what you put in as posts.
Well, I think I'm so glad you led with that, because honestly, at the moment, I think people are leading very curated lives that, for the most part, aren't true. We're all looking at the highlight reel of this one traveling here, having a coffee there, lounging, and I don't know, in Dubai or whatever. And it's all great, but the trouble is, it's breeding comparison itis like never before. And I think if you've got any kind of feelings of not being enough, or you should be doing something, or you've wasted your life. What have you done? You haven't got the perceived success that you're seeing online. It's very hard for people. And I think it's hard for young people, but I think it's also now seeping into people who have got the credentials, who have had the successes, and now they're thinking, now they're not even enough, because they're seeing these very curated lives on LinkedIn and all the other social medias. And I think the thing is, what you really now got to do is really look within. And that's why I started really the You Review, because people need to understand who they are first. If you have a solid understanding of who you are, you're going to be unshakable out there pretty much, because it's not going to bother you. If you think that, oh, actually I'm really not enough, or I'm really unconfident, or oh, I'm not really good enough, and all the things that I've done are now the thing that people are looking for, you're going to have these feelings, and it's only going to get worse on social. And you're absolutely right. The more controversial, the more aggressive, the more kind of what I call hate bait, all of this sort of stuff. Yes, it does, because algorithms, like engagement. That's what they reward.
Mm.
So, I mean, I remember when I first put a post out on LinkedIn, I'm ashamed to say it took me like 5 days of carefully curating it and sending it over to another couple of friends. And I remember it distinctly. And then I put it out, and I think it got like 2 likes. And I was like, what did I do wrong? But I didn't really understand that, of course, the algorithm does certain things, and it changes all the time. We say the algorithm, but there's many, and it changes all the time. And I think that's the thing. You can't believe what you're seeing anymore. So you have to have a rock solid center about what it is and what you believe to be true about you. So, my attitude is, if you see something on social media and it starts to rattle you, scroll on. Just scroll on. Don't waste your time on it, because you don't know what is behind that person. You don't know how many hours it took them to shoot that video or that holiday shot, or even whether the holiday shot is real. The stories that people are telling aren't necessarily authentic anymore, etc. So you've really got to curate yourself and decide what you're going to engage with. Now, not everything deserves a comment. Don't get involved in things where people obviously are looking for clickbait or something like that, because what is the point?
And
You
I,
have to
I
ask
I
yourself.
like this, and I've got people that I look at. One of the things which, again, as you show up as your authentic self, there's a couple of ladies, and
Mm.
shall we say they use their feminine charms, and I'm like, really, really, and it garners interest from the opposite sex, and I'm thinking, but how is that helping your business as such? And from a reputational perspective, um, what is that doing to your brand?
Mm.
And it's not all about the likes, and it's not all about the comments, because somebody said to me as well, oh, you didn't post for a couple of days. I wasn't very well and
Mm.
things were going on. And gosh, and it just kind of went on the back burner. And I thought that person's never engaged, they've never said anything, they've never liked anything, but they're obviously having a look, which is
Mm.
interesting, I think.
Oh my goodness. I mean, honestly, when I started posting on LinkedIn, I got garnered a following of people, and I did a lot of lives when they used to do the audios and things like that. And it was great. But the people that actually bought from me were people who never liked my posts. I never knew they were engaging at all, but they were looking. And that I would say that's the vast majority of customers that I have had from clients from LinkedIn. Because in my business, of course, we're talking about senior corporate professionals. And what they most fear is that their boss or their future boss is going to see them liking a coach. Now, our American colleagues are
Oh.
slightly different, because I think the fact you can have a coach for anything, eating, nutrition, working out, yoga, confidence, they're used to that. That their education level is much higher in terms of coaching. Whereas I think in possibly in the UK, I'm talking about really specifically here, coaching is seen in two levels. Either you're a very high performer, and so you get all of those things. I call those the people like the racehorses. I used to work in consultancy, and it was always those very top layer of people who just got the same things all the time. I mean, the company were pumping literally hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds into their top performers, and good for them. But everybody else who fell under that, you were either coached at the bottom, in other words, you're being kind of, and I dare I say it, but coached out of the business. So it's sort of made to see, well, we've done all we can, but actually now we're gonna slightly edge you out because you've done something wrong. And there's a whole piece in the middle, what I call the grey middle, where people don't really know how coaching is actually going to help them or move them forward, or maybe they just think it's a luxury and they'd rather have a handbag or a new pair of, the latest trainers. They don't see that investment in themselves. But all of them are worried about what their future boss or bosses are going to think, and that's why often coaches don't necessarily coaches who get a lot of likes, fine, but they're not necessarily their ideal customers.
I never thought of it like that. And that
Mm.
is so true because, as well, you don't want to be seen to be on social media making your presence known when perhaps you should be doing something else. So
Well,
that's,
yeah,
that's another thing, isn't it? If you're visible, they've got an audit trail perhaps as to, well, why are you on that at, 3:30 in the afternoon,
yep,
etc.
yep.
So that's a very interesting take on it. And this comes up from the whole thing of perspective of authenticity.
Mm,
And you said earlier, you've got to be true to who you are. But I know that I've gone through a number of changes in my life, not least the nervous breakthrough a few years ago, which,
mm,
which was very different to the person that I am now. And to be true to the old person, I mean, I think I probably was, but it wasn't standing me in very good stead. I'd love for you to go into this whole concept about the authenticity. What is it that you do with the you review? Because I think there's something in the
yeah,
title as to
exactly. Yeah,
what
and thank
what
you.
is that? What is it all? What's it? Yeah, I'll let you say a bit
Mm.
on that.
Well, no, to be honest, there are, and let me just go back a little bit. My story basically is that I didn't grow up with my parents. So I grew up in a farm in the middle of Kent with white parents who are the age of my then grandparents, elderly grandparents. So sort of being in that environment where people didn't look like me, didn't have hair like mine, didn't, I was always very visible. And this is something that was not welcome at that point. So people talk about visibility, people want visibility, but what they don't understand is what the other side of visibility really looks like. It also looks like that you don't fit in. You attract sometimes attention that you don't necessarily want. Um, and you sometimes, if you want to just sort of fade into the background or just be part of a crowd, that's not open to you. So I started to look. I mean, it's always been there, and it's always been through all of my school, my career, my first time at college, until I sort of moved to London, which was, far more multicultural, and I had the opportunity to sort of blend in, which at that point I really wanted to do. I wanted to blend in. I didn't want to be stand out and be different. But I believe there are what I consider to be three portions of our personality. I mean, obviously we're multifaceted, but the main things are the secret self, the private self, and the public self. So if I can just explain what those are. So the secret self is the person who you really are inside, the person who wants to be a painter but has actually ended up being an accountant, the person who wants to, I don't know, like me, walk in the forest all day. I would love that. But that's not been part of my career path. So I have to find somehow else to bring that part to me. Okay, so that's the things that you don't talk about to anybody else, and that's the person who you really are deep inside. The private self is the person you are with your kind of like your friends and family, and this part I think is probably the biggest influence of how we end up doing things, because some people that I work with unfortunately are living their parents ideal of what they want to do, and this is sometimes what happens to people who are incredibly successful, and then suddenly one day they think I just can't do this anymore. I can't be in this environment anymore because it's so far from their secret self, it's so far from who they wanted to be, but they have skills that they're really good at, and so they double down on those skills, or they double down on the skills that their parents want them to amplify. And then there is uh, kind of like public self, which is what I call your brand. So that's your very curated self. And this is what we were talking about earlier, the curated self. Oh, I'm in Dubai for 3 weeks and having a ball. I'm working, I don't know, 2 seconds a day on my multi-million pound business. And I'm there with my various cocktails and doing whatever I want to do. Okay. And that's the image that sometimes that we can portray. And sometimes people do that very successfully. And if people don't inquire or are curious as to find out a bit more about that person, that's what they would believe. So we're all kind of in control of our public self, but our private and our secret self, this is where we struggle. And this is where people, like you say, if you had a breakthrough, I had a series of jobs where I just didn't understand where I was getting the same boss. And then I had to realize that actually that common denominator was me.
Mm.
What was I doing to attract this kind of attention that I didn't want? Why was I in this? Why was I going into these environments? I was going to these environments because it was easy, because that's what my CV said. So I went from one environment to the same environment to another environment that attracted the same type of bosses, doing the same type of things. So I was getting the same results.
If I can just kind of interject there, because this is really something that I know that I've discovered. I was doing
Mm.
well, I mean, one man's poison is another man's, what is it? In medicine or whatever.
Yeah.
But I was doing stuff that was completely at odds with who I truly knew I was deep down, although I couldn't quite see who that was. And I was doing these high pressure, very dog eat dog jobs, which was so far from what I'm like as a person. And the people that it attracted were those people who were, and fair play to them, so ambitious, so kind of ruthless, really like on it. Like, I've got to admire their energy, up at 4 a.m. and working till midnight and
Hmm.
still doing it relentlessly. And I put myself in that position because, again, I wanted to please my parental idea of what I thought that would curry favor with me, and it never did. But there you go. You learn by your mistakes. And I used to try and adopt those personas, and it caused me a nervous breakthrough, to be honest with you, because my body in the end just went, you can't do this anymore. And it
Exactly.
was like, oh, okay. And now I probably, in the weirdest way, I've got the energy that those people had. So as I said just before we came on air, doing in the Australian market, I'm doing with the US market. So I've got different times of the day. So I'm actually packing so much in and loving every minute of it, whereas before it was disaster. And I am so focused and I'm so driven. And I take the view that actually, weirdly enough, I'm very heart-centered. So there's a difference between, well, who's to say those people weren't heart-centered? It's just I couldn't see it from my position at the time.
Mm.
But oddly enough, I kind of identify with the way that they were in themselves a lot more than I used to. And I'm like, oh, I'm kind of like that. But now I've found my passion. That's it, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think the thing is, I mean, I've had lots of different jobs, and this is why I think I do what I do, really, because it took me a long time to kind of find out what I really wanted to focus on. Let's put it that way. And also as well, environment is so important. So I started off at administration, and then I went into sales, and I did high octane newspaper media sales. And I'm
Oh,
telling
I know
you,
what that's like.
it's
I was
like, and
one
I
of
did that
them.
for 5 years. I had a
Oh, good
stint
for
where I left and I
you.
came back, and I absolutely loved it. And the reason why I loved it at that point as well, not only because the money was amazing and I felt in control of my earnings, because the better I was, the more I earned, the more validation I could give myself. At that point, I think I had about I had a shoe collection rivaling Imelda Marcos, you know what I mean? It was just like, but also at that time, I was going to like aerobics like 7 days a week because there was so much to do in terms of that, you're up there all the time and you can't live like that. And after I came out of that sales environment, because I wanted to move into management, and they were like, oh no, That's not for you. You just stay on the phone. And I was really shocked by that because I thought performance, working hard meant promotion. And of course it didn't. I had no concept of that at that time. And it came as a real shock to my system. And then I realized, oh, there's another game that is being played. And I was outside of that circle in lots of different ways. And it took me years to realize what I needed to do in order to make myself visible in the right way.
Go back again. So you said there was a game that was being played and you weren't part of it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Ta-
So that, so,
Take
yeah,
us
so
through
that, so
that a
that
little
game
bit
was, I
more.
mean, now I realize it was networking. I wasn't networked with the right people.
Mm,
Didn't
okay.
know, people didn't know who I was. So they
Yeah.
knew my results, but those results were being collected by my manager. So I was really great. But of course, this is why a lot of people um, feel that they're not being seen at work because I call it the manager tax. Your manager, when they go into their meeting, their manager or leader says, what are the figures for X, Y, and Z? They're not going to say, oh, yes, Selina did so and so. They're going to say, yeah, we, at this point, meaning I, my team, I. So they're taking
Yeah.
all of that, and that's
Yeah.
absolutely fine because that's how that goes. But there comes a point at which you have to start making, and people are going to hate me for saying this, but I tell all of my clients this: you have to make contacts above your boss, outside of your boss, because that's how you build a reputation for yourself. Because if you don't have a boss that's generous enough to promote you and all the things that people say and have been saying for years, they don't work, and they only worked for a certain type of person. But they don't, most of the time they don't work for you, and that's why people are confused. You're pleasing the boss because you're worried about losing your job, but actually are more likely to maintain your job if you know other people.
At their
So
level.
at their level and above their level. So I always encourage
Yeah.
people, if you are performative, and I'm very performative, as in my results, I'm a very hard worker. And also, being a black person, a black woman, working in large corporate white, but especially back then, you had to be three times as good because, again, you were seen. So you were a risk. If they scanned a room, I worked on a floor of 140 salespeople. There were literally two people, myself and another girl. So who do they think?
Good on you, because I've always felt that being a woman in a male environment, because I was in the finance side of
Mm,
things
mm,
and advertising as well, newspaper advertising as a kid.
mm.
And that was interesting. And you could see the demarcation of men and women. The women would be doing the admin, and I was on the sales side, and it was just all men.
Yeah.
And I have to say that was that was weird in a
I,
way.
I,
And
I, I,
I don't
I
mind
actually didn't
guys. I've got
mind it.
nothing against men. There's,
I
no.
didn't mind it. I've actually found that in my career, there's been many men who have been much more supportive of me in terms of promoting my abilities than women in many
Do
cases.
you
And the
know?
reason
Yeah.
and the reason for that
What
is
is that about? Why don't we help each other?
I think the thing is I think men see performance. So if you're performing, especially in a sales environment, honestly, it doesn't really matter who's doing it, as long as you're doing what you need to do. I think where women leaders are, and I think this is women in general, women expect other women to be friendly. They want to be your friend. You have to inquire about their family, their life situation, or whatever it is, because they need to like you before they can respect you. Whereas I think with men, they just want respect. They don't really care about anything else. I'm talking in very general terms,
I know. Yeah.
very, very
Yeah. Yeah.
generalities
Because
here,
I mean,
not
people going,
for
that's not me. That's
everybody.
not me.
No, 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 of course. And I understand that. But I think I'm certainly talking for my sort of journey and what my experience has been in the past is that I look for people now. I don't look for, are they my color? Are they a man? Are they a woman? I don't look at that. I look at their values. I look at who they are as
Yeah.
people. How they treat other people is whether I'm going to resonate with them. I don't think you can. I think this is a very surface level thing now, men and women. Yeah, yes, we can group ourselves, but there's so many nuances that um, people are surprised at. They're
Well, the other
surprised that,
thing is
oh,
you can't help the accident of your birth. You're born a black person, you're born a white person, you're born an Oriental person, you're born whatever you are. So you're born into that. You're born a woman, you're born a man, you're born with a certain, at that point in time, identity that sort of changes and moves, which it should do, and shifts over time. all these things you didn't really have the, unless you say that your soul chose the destiny that it chose, but ultimately, you're kind of given that, aren't you?
Mm,
That's
mm.
how the cards lie. And you know what? Sometimes in different eras, certain cultures have been elevated and then they don't shine anymore and they go down and other cultures rise up and it's all or faiths or whatever it is.
Well, I think times are
And
changing, and I think we all have something to offer. But the thing is, if you don't have that opportunity, and the good thing about, I mean, my wonderful foster mother, who I consider to be my mother, um, she really pushed me because she knew she wasn't going to be around. So she knew that I had to stand on my own 2 feet. I had to get myself out there. I had to be able to support myself without that safety net. So I never came with that safety net. And so I was always very competitive with myself. You know, I always knew I could do better. I wasn't going to be doing things that other people were going to be doing because I knew that that wasn't my path. And I had that training very early. And then, of course, when I finally got into sales, because I hated administration. Not I didn't hate it, but I knew that this wasn't going to be my pathway,
yeah,
and I wanted something where I had a measure of independence and autonomy. And that's been a theme that's run through all of my jobs, really. I love to have autonomy to do what I want to do. So someone who's a micromanager and me, but we're never gonna meet in the center. And I've had a few micromanagement jobs.
I agree with this. And again, when you do the you review, there's no right or wrong, is there? You are what you are. And as long as you're happy, as long as you are doing something which fulfilling and you're getting the most out of it,
Mm.
and there are born administrators. And, I have a business process outsourcing business, so that's all administration, but my wonderful team of the administrators. If you saw my desk right now, you'd have a heart attack. Oh my God. I'm not the tidiest person in the world, I have to say. Every now and again, I've got to do a blitz. And then in half an hour, it all goes back again. I don't know quite what happens. I've got more organization drawers and boxes and tins and things
Oh, I love a
that
box.
looks nice. And
See, I
then
love I love boxes. I'm very
I
like I
know.
love
I'm like,
putting things in
oh,
boxes.
yeah, don't have a
But
look at mine. But you know what? I've come to terms with the fact that I'm not guilty about it anymore. I know where everything is. It might not look completely tidy. They do say a cluttered desk is a cluttered mind. And there is a lot going on in my head, but that's how I work. That's how I am. And so I've kind of come to terms with it over the years. What
mm.
would you say to somebody? And then because of your career and your development and your coaching, somebody that, like you said, which really resonated, that you kept on working for the same boss, as it were. But was it the same person, or did you bring out the same qualities in the people that you were
Well, I
with?
mean, it's funny you should mention that because it's given me an opportunity to talk about what I'm doing now, really, to really help people. I've started something called the Hidden Edge Career Audit, and that is a very, very revealing deep dive audit into who you really are as a person. And we have been, my business partner and I, we have been literally uh, putting this out there, and it's like, oh my goodness, the results have been amazing because these are the things about the secret self that you would never admit even to your best friend, you
Don't
know.
even want to admit them to
You
yourself
don't even want to admit them to,
sometimes.
and that is exactly it. You don't admit these things to yourself. And therefore, if you don't admit these things to yourself, you don't really know yourself. Therefore, you keep doing things the same way. So, for example, I know I've always known that I always want freedom and autonomy. But does that make me a bad team player? No, it doesn't. But that's my learned experience. I will work with a team and I absolutely love it. But really, I'm competitive enough to want to be the top banana. So that's something that I'm thinking, and it's something sometimes you're almost forced into this funnel of, oh, well, if I'm not a team player, then who am I? I'm not quite the leader, then who am I?
But
So
there
that
comes a point where there's a certain amount of disagreeableness that has to happen because you know what? Life is full of different sorts of characters. So if you're
mm,
all team
mm.
players and you're all doing it by consensus, which is fine, but then there's somebody there with a dynamic that's perhaps more narcissistic and a bit more like, I want it my way. All the
What it
team players
is,
go,
I think with a lot of leaders is that, remember, the corporate space is built on a pyramid.
yeah,
People at the top, and there's various different strata, so that say the board or the CEO, let's for argument's sake, and the C-suite, then the next sort of layer, and then further down. So everybody, it's almost built like an army thing. So you give the command and the commands come down, and you're not supposed to argue with those commands, okay? Because people judge that someone with a title is smarter, cleverer, um, more capable. When actually that's not always the case.
Mm.
People sometimes know somebody and they leapfrog into a role, shall we say, or they are nice and they get on with the top people, and so they get up into those roles, or they're really great at their jobs, so they get promoted into their jobs, but they have no leadership skills at all because that's not really who they are. They don't want to be bothered with somebody else, or maybe they've had a life path that has been, shall we say, relatively obstacle free. So when they meet people who seem to have quite a few challenges, want to ask questions, things like that, they don't want to know. And therefore, that's where the difficulty starts. So, for example, if you have a boss who is, likes to work from home, is very organized, doesn't want to work beyond, I don't know, maybe 6 o'clock in the evening, then you're golden if that's who you are. But if you've had the boss who, and I've had these people who wants to send that email at 3 a.m. and then wants the answer, you to have got an answer from you by 8 a.m. before you've even left your house, because you start at 9 o'clock, but you've actually got to go back with the answer, then your life is going to start going into meltdown. I mean, I worked in advertising in an agency, and so we always said there were two types of time. There's our time and there's client time. So when that client leaves their desk and they think, oh, I've just got one last thing, I've got a meeting at, I don't know, 9 o'clock, and I need something from our creative team. If I'm the account director, what have I got to do? I've got to be in that office at 5 o'clock to manage that. I've got to have all my briefs laid out, ready, make sure everything's done and dusted. I've got to have my pricing done. I've then got to email my creative director, who's then got to have something, who's then got to get their best people on hand to reinterpret this brief. So this person can get this at 8:30 before that person meets their manager at 9 o'clock.
Mm.
See, that's how that pressure builds. And that's why people find it very hard to manage others if they're under that initial pressure themselves. So sometimes it is the environment that you're in, and you need to really be cognizant of the environment. And that's why finding your hidden edge is so true, because you need to know who you are. How do you work? What's going to rattle you? If you've got presentations and you've suddenly got, you think you're an imposter or whatever you want to call it, that's going to be no good for you, because you're forever going to be hyperventilating inside. You're forever going to be on edge.
And it's
And
the
all
lack
of
of
these things.
boundaries a lot from what you're saying, because I know I've been in situations, actually, I'm the one that will wake up at 3 a.m. in the morning and fire off a message on our group WhatsApp for the team. And every now and again, somebody responds, and I go, you don't have to. It's just I needed to offload that, because otherwise I'd be having it in my head all night and I wouldn't be able to get to sleep. But ultimately, I don't expect you to start on it, like what have you. And they
But
know.
you have an international team, and that's slightly different because your team are working at all
Well,
different
yeah, I
times of
mean,
the day
I've
and
got a
night.
team that are
But
5 hours, what are they, 5 hours behind me. So in a
yeah, there you
sense,
go.
we have a bit of a, it's fine, and
Mm,
they'll send me stuff, etc. But my first team member gets in at, say, 5 a.m. UK time, and that's all good. But depending on how the mood takes me, I could have woken up and sent a few little
mm,
notes
mm, mm.
overnight,
But
kind
also
of thing.
depending on how that has been set up for them. So obviously that they know that you're almost like a 24-hour operation that may work for you. But if you're in a normal, what I call a normal, traditionally 8 till 6 environment, let's put it that way, then that is going to rattle some people, and
And you
people
know what
don't know
I
how to
say?
deal with it.
I say, just manage me and just say yes or no, I can or can't do that, and I'll be
Mm,
fine. It's when I don't know that's the issue. And then
mm,
I'll ask and I'll go, what's happened? And I always say, just like today, had a discussion with somebody. I went, what can we do to make sure that I don't have to keep on ringing you for this
yeah,
information?
yeah, and that's
They
about
went, you know what I'm going to
SOPs
do?
and
I'm
structures
going
and
to
all of
set you
that.
a WhatsApp every morning when I get in first thing. And I went, fine.
Yeah.
And because I thought I'm getting bugged by it, they must be. So we got to have a solution to this. And
Mm.
I always encourage my team, if you can think of a way that's actually, and this is again digging deep in who we are, not everybody's comfortable putting stuff up to as opposed to their boss, their manager.
Exactly, and really to that point, and I want to reassure listeners, That is the whole point. What type of leader are you? Are you open to discussion? But if you've got I say you've got, I don't know, 6 or 7 first reports, and then they've got various people behind, you need to, you're not going to have the time to know what is going on with those people just because of the way the day goes, the hours goes, and things like that. And that's why you become separated from who you really are. How you want to do business is not how you want to do business because you're busy, and that's how these things start. And then what happens is there's a dissension within people that I don't feel seen. I just got this 2-line email. I mean, what's with the 2-line email? I mean, it's like if I'm not explaining myself to a point where someone can understand what the instruction is, then I've wasted my time, because that person's going to sit there for 15, 20 minutes, half an hour wondering what it is I'm asking. And
And I have a collaborator who is an excellent person, absolutely love them to bits. And they come back and they say 2 sentences, and I go back and fire it back and go, need a bit of context with this, please. I just fire
exactly,
it
but it
back.
takes
I
bravery.
can't,
It
I
takes
can't
bravery to
make it
do
out.
this. And
A few years ago, I'd have been like, I'm an ahhing over it, thinking, what do I mean? But now it's just like, you know what, love you, but don't know what it means.
yeah,
Get on with it again.
exactly. And but it takes courage to
Yeah,
be able to fire this back off to your and person. Well, everybody else, because it's always there. Everybody else understands when you become the exception, but everybody else is this.
doesn't
And when people say
understand.
that, everybody else gets it, but you don't. Everybody else
Yeah,
get. And therefore people just feel, I can't be the exception. You feel like you're trouble or something like that. And so it's important for leaders to understand, how they interact, and are they willing to at least modify some of the things that they do, or actually take team feedback. And that's rare, because a lot of people don't want someone to give them feedback. They say they do, but they don't. Most
good
people,
honest
and I've
feedback
got
is
and I've got to and
sometimes
I've got to
a bitter, a bit of medicine that
well,
you.
I think there's several types of feedback. There's feedback that's personal. There's feedback that's in context to the person understanding the background. So people have given me feedback over a project, but it's like, I didn't have the resources at that time. You didn't release the budget at that time. Maybe two members of the team were off sick. Maybe you didn't come back on time. Maybe there was a secret stakeholder that suddenly stepped in with some other requirement. So when you're uh, giving somebody feedback, you need to have the contextual background of what
Yeah,
actually is happening. And that's why I say to people, feedback, if you're going to have feedback, you need to have the context, because people love giving feedback, like, oh, you need to accept feedback. Do I? No. Do you understand the context? No, you don't. So therefore, that's why people get defensive. So before managers give feedback on things that maybe haven't gone their way, they need to have a contextual aspect to it. Yeah. And then there's some things like very personal feedback. Oh, I don't like your hair, or you know what I mean? I didn't like the way you were doing, I don't know, the way you looked at the client, or some stupid example, but whatever. That's not feedback. That's just a personal
that's an
critique.
attack.
Exactly.
It's
So
an
there's
attack.
certain types of feedback that are not, I don't think, that are valid. And there's I can't remember
I had to
unfortunately, I
tell
can't
one of
remember
my
the.
team members, because they're all young, wonderful people, and they came in and they had a baseball cap the wrong way round. And it was obvious that, they were in kind of like weekend mode. And when we came off the call, I just said, oh, wait, we just need to have a chat. And I went, we can't be doing with the back to front baseball cap and the sweatshirt with whatever it was on. I said, because it's fine in the place for the weekend. It's just not how we roll in this day-to-day stuff. I said, I don't
Again,
want my
culture
clients seeing
and
that.
environment,
Yeah,
and that's why. So for some people, we need to really understand the culture and environment that we are in, and it's this lack of self-awareness that is causing issues, that's causing the problem often. The most important thing I feel for most people is that they're in the wrong environment, an environment that doesn't support who they are, and only they know who they are, and therefore
mm.
they need to look at those things. I mean, listen, information is at people's fingertips these days, so you have the power to research every single job that you go for, or the environment, but stop looking at a logo like it's the be all and end all. Some of these places are not for you. They're
Oh,
not going to
yeah, oh,
support you.
gosh. Oh,
Not going to
yeah,
be You're not going
absolutely.
to have the ability to be seen in those places, because of the hierarchy, or because maybe you don't fit the shall we say, the template of the sort of person that they want up in their upper echelons. You
And the
have to
other
look
thing
at all
is
of
as
those
well,
things.
as I say to my folks, just look at our branding. If we were high-fiving and having that young vibe in that creative thing where ripped denim and piercings and tattoos and I hate, I've got anything against that. You know, I've been rebellious in my time. I've lived, you know, I've put clothes on that you go, really? But you know, if that's your norm and you're really comfortable in that edgy, streety kind of thing, then my business isn't necessarily going to make you feel
Well,
really
culturally, the
comfortable, you
bit,
know?
yeah, culturally, the business probably isn't going to be for them. I mean, I have no problem with whatever people want to turn up like, but there are things that certain, if you're client facing, there's certain things that maybe your clients won't appreciate, you know,
Do you know,
or
I haven't got anything against it
or
either,
some
but
clients
it's, yeah, and
don't
I,
care depending on what you do. If you're in a role where it doesn't really matter and you're not client facing or whatever it is, it doesn't really matter. But for some people, it does matter. Now, I, like you, have worked in corporate, so I know that certain things do and don't go in those in those corporate machines because they are what they are. I mean, what was it the case that there was a case not that long ago, I think it was a few years ago, before COVID happened, and there was a woman who was working for PW. She was agency staff and she had to go into PwC. If you've ever been into PwC, they had like the kind of these reception staff and who were all, dressed in a certain way. And at that point, they had a shoe heel requirement. So you had to be in a certain height of heel for that particular. Anyway, she made such a fuss, and I think there was some sort of court case over. I can't remember the exact details, so I'm sure somebody will correct this in the comments. But there was a big fuss about why she had to stand 15 hours in at reception or whatever it was in you know, these particular shoes that she didn't, think she ought to have done. But that was not the right environment for her because they had a dress code. They had a dress code that they wanted all the reception. And I've been in those places where you need to look a certain way, or they want you to look a certain way because that's how their business is. Now, those businesses too have learned that, you aren't necessarily the person just because you're wearing a particular shoe or you have I don't know, a tattoo on your neck or something. Who cares? But at that point in time, it mattered. And therefore, she was in the wrong environment at that time.
I get
You
it.
know,
I mean, I'm all for everything, etc., but find the roles, etc., that embrace who you are and what you feel and how you think, etc., rather than the ones that are not going to be the fit that makes you feel comfortable and part of the whole environment, etc. Because it's like everything, you know, families are different. We've all got our nuanced family traits, and one person said, "Oh, I couldn't live in your family." My goodness me, for whatever reason, or
mm, mm,
"Oh, I
mm.
love your family. I wish I could live in a family like that." You know, you being the maybe
Exactly. So
one
it's
out
all
in your
about,
own family. It's nothing. I don't think a lot of people don't go in and say, we're going to bring other people down necessarily or make them feel awful, but it's the whole thing that you just kind of know
mm.
that certain
Well, you
roles
need to know
have
who
certain
you are. You need to
criteria.
know who you are. I mean, there are some people who go into very straitjacketed environments because they can, because the logo over the door looks good, but actually it's not for them. I mean, I often see people with, I don't know, a lot of the big organizations like X this, X that, X that. I'm thinking, why are you all putting all these X's on here? Because clearly these environments don't suit you.
You're
It's
not there
actually not.
anymore.
Well, not only are you not there anymore, but they obviously didn't suit you in the first place. But you continue
Mm.
to go over. Where some people think, oh, it's a badge of honor. I worked for, for some big name, Google, Meta, one of the FANG organizations or something like that. But it's like you've been through the whole lot now. So clearly this wasn't for you. You need to be looking at something else because what you're doing, you're caught in what I call the status loop. There are four things that most people find challenging in their work. And one of them is feelings of irrelevancy. The second thing is the status, what I call the status loop. And that is, the logo is far more important than actually your own personal happiness, or you're being paid too much money to actually leave a job you're absolutely, rather stab a pencil in your eye than go there for another day. But you think, oh, well, it's paid for the second holiday to Barbados, which I can just put on my Facebook or something. The third thing is actually, not knowing what's next for you. So maybe you've woken up and you feel that actually this is my time now to find purpose, or maybe there's been a massive kind of jolt in your career where you're really having to relook at what you need to do next. And the fourth one is my favorite, which is the time, autonomy, and freedom piece. I know my skills. I want to be able to do that with minimal interference from my boss. I don't want to be punished for uh, doing a job in 2 hours that you want me to do in an 8 hour day. If I can do that job in 2 hours because I'm highly skilled at that, I don't want you to tell me that I have to continue to sit at my desk or laptop for 8 hours because you think that that's what it should take.
Yes, yes, the
So
flexibility.
everyone has a mixture of all of those things, and the hidden edge will start to pull out some of these things, these deep seated worries. And that's why when you know yourself, you're going to start to look at things differently. You're going to start to look at, is this environment the right place? You're going to ask people, what type of boss are you? What's expected? What's really expected? You're going to start maybe looking at other people who've worked there. You're going to really start to think about that, because now, where we are in this day and age, jobs are very hard fought. So if you are in a job and you don't like it, and then you're out of that job very quickly, then you've got to go through the whole process all over again continually. So you need to know where you are and that it suits you, and that you're going to have a modicum of happiness there, and that you're somewhere where you can thrive.
And you know what? You don't get that time back again. The
Oh,
immense amount of
you
time
don't.
leaving my home to travel in to get into the place of work and
Mm.
to, oh my goodness me, that was mega hours that
Yeah.
you can't get back. And you've got to, I always think, life is, we only come around once that we know of. And ultimately, it's making
Mm.
sure that we've got that. Yeah, I've made the most useful amount of time. Now, sometimes we need to knuckle down and actually get through something that we know isn't going to be
Mm.
all a bed of roses, etc. And it's going to push us to our limits. And maybe we want to learn something or achieve something that we know is
Yeah.
not going to be forever, but it's going to be for that length of time.
Mm.
And we've got to give it our all. But that then still has the purpose. It's when it becomes this sitting on a train or the commute in and thinking, what am I doing? Why am I
Yeah.
doing this? Really? And it's like, for whom, why? And I used to say, with any job that I've had, which I felt like, nah, it was always because I've always been client facing in some regard, even if I
Mm.
didn't actually see them. My clients were the reason why I stayed, because I always used to love, without exception, I used to love my clients. And so
Mhm.
everything else might not have been fantastic, but I felt great kinship and tribal togetherness with my clients. And I think I've stayed in positions too long because of that, because I thought, well, I can't leave my clients. I just love them so much. It's the reason why I do it. So,
Oh, I've
yeah.
been the opposite. I mean, I've loved the clients, but I've still gone anyway because I just because that's just not the version. I'm quite rebellious like that, really, because I just think if there's that disrespect there to me, I have to move on,
Oh,
and
if
I'm not
somebody's
gonna. And also as
disrespectful,
well,
yeah.
I mean, I talk about versioning. I mean, we're all changing. It's like a snake who sheds a skin. You can't go
Mm.
backwards in time, because sometimes there are, I don't know, economic circumstances or personal circumstances that supported where you wanted to be. Like you say, you wanted to learn a particular skill. So that was the organization that was the best organization to be in for you to, become an expert at that particular thing. And so there's certain things that have to come together for you to then move on to the next step. And the whole point is to move on, not to stay stuck where you are. And that's why you get so many people who should have gone for a promotion but are too frightened to, so they stay in the same job. So when they get a new manager, those sort of people, it's like, oh, so and so's been on the team, I don't know, 17,000 years, and it's like they've just changed the manager, and you're thinking, why is this person who knows so much, who is going to question the manager, why hadn't you moved on? Why didn't you take that leap? Most of the time it's because they're scared. They're scared because they don't want
Mm.
to be challenged. They don't want, they feel very confident in their comfort zone. But what they want to do is then fight the new person that's coming in to manage them. I've
Oh,
seen it
I've seen
happen
people like
loads of
that.
times. But actually, those people need to be moved on. They need to move themselves on, because
They
actually they're fighting
criticize
something.
everything, but they never make anything happen themselves. And I've
Exactly.
seen that, and it's just like, why don't you just shut up? If you want to do it, go do the job.
Exactly. And that's why, exactly, this is why you need to find what your hidden edge is, because those people like that need to understand what is really holding them back, because they're making it about everything else. And the trouble is, when you have situations or you're trying to cover something, your whole life is about covering that thing. So you're protecting that thing all the time because you don't want to admit, actually, I don't have the confidence to go for a job. It takes a lot to say that to someone. I don't have the confidence to move up. And then you start from the point of, okay, if you don't have the confidence, what do we need to do to give you confidence? What are the situations that make you feel unconfident? What are the things? Is it knowledge? Is it, your persona? Is it because you're so frightened of what other people might think? Are you too frightened of failure? Are you procrastinating over something inside of you that you need to just move on with? And you don't know that until you've got a baseline.
Oh, I was so unconfident, and I used to bolster it up with everybody else being wrong and me just, being a victim. And ultimately, now I look back and I think, Deborah, you were such a fool because actually you were the one who was the most unconfident. You were the one who didn't actually want to be inside your own skin. You were the one that
Yeah.
needed to work on yourself. And I think you mentioned right from the get-go about not investing in coaches. And there's like to use this probably as one of our sort of summing up discussion
Mm,
pieces because now I can't get enough of investing myself. And that is time and money and effort and genuine desire to work through what I know I need to work through, or that I don't know I need to work through for somebody to tell me, or let me see for myself through somebody else's lens or guidance. And so I'm like investing big time in my personal and career management and progress because now I've realized I am
mm,
actually valuable enough to invest in.
yes.
And the fact is that I know I am resilient and can achieve what I set my mind to. So why not invest in that and get it embedded and maybe quicker or with better results or with less stress or heartache or fear? And now I've realized I'm like, why didn't I invest in myself for all those years? Why didn't I do that? And now I realize it's because I didn't feel I was worthy enough to invest in. That's
Uh,
me. You're not maybe
yeah, and I think
everybody else.
I think what you've said is what a lot of people believe in. I mean, I didn't have mentors. I didn't understand what coaching really was. And often people when they talk about their stories, they talk about a particular mentor they managed to, meet somebody. I didn't have all that. I had books. I was always an avid book reader. So I always had to find out for myself, and I read and I read and the thing is I just put that into action. And then later, much later, the coaching came because I didn't realize there were people out there. It wasn't until got into those environments I thought, oh, this person's getting help from science. Oh, that person's getting help. So what my thing was, I always had sponsors. I got very good at attracting internal sponsors who helped me to move on up. And that's how I really realized when I got into those circles, I realized what that was about. But when you don't know, you just don't know.
No, I
And
mean, I
you
was
don't know
never
what your
told that you could go
capability.
externally and pay for your own coaching. You didn't even just say anything, but I didn't even know that world existed when I was in corporate.
Yeah, exactly. Because you weren't in the right circles or maybe at the right level. I didn't realize that you could do that either for very, very many years. And it was all about who you knew or the person who was going to suddenly pick you out and do that. And I thought to myself, well, why not me?
Mm.
And that's why I was very performative at work because I managed to do a lot of work and get noticed by people up, 2 or 3 stages up from my boss because my performance was outstanding in many cases. And also, I made the effort to get to know people who were not necessarily my boss, people around me. And that's all the whole circle of people, top, sideways, and down, because you can't ignore the people who are beneath you either in terms of what you do. Because often, as I say to my clients, they can be the bear trap. How you treat people on the way up is going to be the same. people you're going to see on the way down. And also, I really
And then
believe in
when
like,
they rise up, then they're going to be
well,
perhaps
it's not
peer
that it's
group.
crab theory. Some people don't want to see you moving ahead because it makes them feel inadequate. So, if you put, a basket of crabs together and one tries to claw up, the others will pull it back in. And that's often what happens to people. So you need to have very solid relationships. You need to understand where you're strong and where you're not so strong and work to your strengths. I always say to people, why are you working to your weaknesses? When you go into a company and they hire you, they shouldn't be talking about your weaknesses. They should be talking about the things that you'd like to learn or get better at. And because they're hiring you for your strengths. And if they're not hiring you for your strengths, you're going to have a rough time in there because you're going to be in a new environment, trying to perform and learn something at the same time. That's a lot for anybody. So
Mm.
you need to go to places where they're looking for your strengths, for you to do that job, and they're looking for you to have an aptitude for certain things. Now, the aptitude now is maybe AI, because it's on everybody's lips. Are you willing to learn? Are you willing to experiment? Are you willing to fail? You've got an aptitude for that. Are you willing to look at your other skills and how that and make them better, make you a better leader? But if you're working to your weaknesses, forget it, because that's not necessarily who you are.
Selina, I love this. I love it all. And I think that
Mm,
you've been absolutely instrumental in helping a lot of people overcome and thrive from where they
thank you.
were and even leave where they've been and go to somewhere new or start their own business or whatever it is that they want to
Yep,
do. Because actually, as I said, you only come around once and it's so much more fulfilling and wonderful. And I know the pay is great and we all set our lifestyles according to the budgets, etc. But sometimes the job without as much money or perhaps potential kudos and status, if we're thriving in it and we love every minute of it, I don't think anybody's going to go, oh, well, you're not at so and so anymore, then, really? Because if they do, are they really worth hanging around with? If
hmm
they're judging you on that level, I mean, it's nearest and dearest that you've got to obviously talk to, but ultimately, you deserve to be happy and thriving and going for it and just enjoying the process, even when sometimes it's not that enjoyable, but you know that you're going towards your purpose in your truth, which I think is just
exactly.
lovely.
And I also think on the side of judgment, one of the things that I will leave you with, and it's this: if somebody has got something to say about what you're doing, I just say thank you, thank you. I don't need to take it on. Thank you for your opinion, but that's it. I don't need to discuss it. Um, I don't need to go any further with it. And I think people need to shut certain things down, and you just need to say thank you, and then it's gone.
Mm, good one. I like that. I like that a
And
lot.
just sit with that, let them sit with that. It does, because their opinion doesn't matter, they're not on my journey. But I know what it's like with family members or something. Oh, you should be the should, woulda, coulda, shoulda. But and then you get into this kind of defensive justifying. I'll just say, well,
The
thanks.
wonderful thing is, are they living your life? No.
No,
Are
they're
you
not.
living theirs? No.
No.
So actually, people come up often well-meaning. It could be naive. Sometimes they're not well-meaning, but sometimes, it's just like, okay, yeah, as you say,
Sometimes
thank
people
you.
use you as their kind of searchlight. You're their
Mm,
beacon. And so when things don't look so good for you, two things happen. Either they are maybe relieved because the pressure is off them to follow your maybe pathway, or they think maybe I can't do this because that person's not doing it anymore. So there's a lot of people who follow you in ways that you don't really understand.
mm, I love
And
it.
sometimes you just have to allow people to think whatever they're going to think and just say thank you. I'm going to be doing whatever I'm doing
Love it.
because I'm
Love it.
doing it.
So, Selena, how can people get hold of you?
Well, you can get me on LinkedIn, which is my main area. You can email me, and obviously the email will be in the show notes. And also you can find out more about the hidden edge, find your hidden edge, and the audit on LinkedIn.
Beautiful. Selena, thank you so much. I've just
Thank
loved
you for
having
having
a
me.
discussion with you.
It's been brilliant.
It's been a
Loved it.
pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you. And for everybody listening, do be in touch with Selena. She's got a great business. She's a great person, and the other thing is, I think it's always important to resonate with a coach that you're dealing with. You got to like them and get on with them. And Selina is a very, very easy person to like, but very knowledgeable as well. So to make no mistake, it's not all tea and biscuits. It's all very much down to business and getting people to really thrive and release some inner things, etc. So sometimes I would say bring the tissues because you never quite know. And then things can be really deeply changed. So do be in touch with her. And so thank you so much for being.
Thank you, Deborah. Really enjoyed it.
Oh,
Thanks.
it's a pleasure. Everybody, we'll see you all again very soon. Like, comment, and subscribe if you can. We always truly appreciate your comments and everything that you're doing, and also to share, because ultimately, as well, this could resonate with just the person. If you shared the episode, that would be fantastic as well. So until next time, everybody, carry on caring, and we'll see you all again very, very soon. Bye bye now.